So what can we do? Well, we got together a group of hundreds of people in Washington, D.C. to start talking about it. And it was the first time that there were people from the legal community, the human rights. We had folks from Yemen, from Pakistan, from Somalia. And we came up with some different campaigns that we have just started to launch. When it comes to the international drones, we are really encouraged by the folks who are getting out in front of the Air Force bases, who are protesting at the sites of the drone producers. And raise your hand here if you've done any kind of protests around a drone so far. Maybe you could tell us what you did. So there have been people at the Creech Air Force Base, upstate New York, the Hancock Air Force Base, that have crossed and gone into the base as part of a protest, been arrested, used their trials as a way to get at these international issues. And there have been regular protests. Anybody else here want to say what they've been involved in?
Other than drones?
Around the drones. So we obviously need to step it up. We need more protests. Beale Air Force Base there was protests just this week. They only had 12 people. We really want to get more people out at these protests. And certainly the visibility is very important. The other thing is that some of the legal authorities who came to the drone conference said, look, you might want to get drones, lethal drones, to not be used at all, but a good beginning is to focus on drones in the hands of the CIA. That at least in the hands of the military, there are some rules of the game. In the hands of the CIA, there are none at all, totally unaccountable. And so we are focusing on Senator Dianne Feinstein, who is the head of the Intelligence Committee, and telling her that she is not doing her job. She has allowed the CIA to run amok, to become a death squad on some would call an industrial scale. And we're passing around some sign-up sheets. We just met with her staff out here this week, and we're meeting with her in Washington, D.C. next week. We'd like to take lots and lots of signatures from her constituents to say, Dianne, do your job, get the drones out of the hands of the CIA. One little tidbit you might find interesting is that according to international law, the CIA, which is a civilian organization, not a military organization, and is involved in military activities, is defined as unlawful combatants. You've heard that term used before. So I talked about the drones being mostly used in Pakistan these days. Well, we have been asked by our friends in Pakistan to organize the first ever peace march with Americans and Pakistanis to try to go to the region where these drones are killing so many innocent people. So we're very excited about that. It's going to be the first week of October. We are asking anybody who's interested to check off the little box there on the sign-up sheet, and we will send you more information. We're trying to get some of the Occupy groups and the Peace and Justice Centers to consider sending a representative from your community, because imagine the power of coming back home with the stories of the drone victims and how important that is in trying to educate more people about these drones. You also might be wondering, what can we do on the international level? What can the UN be doing? It's very exciting that just last week was the first time that the UN really started speaking out against the US drone program. In Geneva, at the UN Human Rights Commission, there was a 28-page report that was commissioned to look at the United States drone program, and came out extremely critical of the US, saying that the Obama administration has to justify its policy of assassinating rather than capturing al-Qaeda or Taliban suspects, and that human rights law requires that every effort be made to arrest a suspect. It called for accountability, justice, and reparations for victims of the drone strike families. So that's an important new development. But there's also a lot of work right now being done by the scientists themselves who understand how dangerous these drones are. trying to get some kind of regulations at the UN. It's called the International Committee for Robot Arms Control, and they are modeling themselves after the campaigns that were done to ban landmines and cluster bombs. So in terms of domestic use, we're trying to influence the way the FAA is writing these regulations. And there's something very simple that we're asking people to do, and that is make a phone call to your police department. We're going to pass around these sheets. They have 3 questions. Do you have any drones? Do you have any plans to get any drones? Have you applied to any government agencies for grants to get these drones? And then to say that you, as a member of this community, don't want to see the police department acquiring any drones. The other thing we have is a local resolution that we're trying to get communities to pass that says we want our community to be a drone-free zone. And we have samples of that resolution. Is there anybody here who is interested in seeing a sample and perhaps trying to get it introduced in your community? So if you hold up your hands for a minute, Tig will pass those out. Just getting this kind of thing discussed in the community is fantastic. And I mentioned when I did the book how hard it was to get a lot of information on drones. Well, now there's information about drones everywhere, and there's talk about drones everywhere. And in fact, there was a great piece that the AP put out this week that talked about, first it was from the left community, like Code Pink and Catholic workers that were speaking out against drones. But now that there's an issue about drones in the United States, there are so many people from the right, and it quoted a congressman, Republican congressman in his very conservative Louisiana community saying, and now when I even go in to shop in a Walmart, I have people coming up to me and saying, what about those drones? What are you going to do to stop those drones? So it's a good time to bring up the conversation. And we have a new website called droneswatch.org that has latest information on it. Somebody just passed me before a piece that came out yesterday in the New York Times by Jimmy Carter that is a fabulous piece that we already put up on our website. Just if you want somebody with the authority of a former president, he says, despite an arbitrary rule that any man killed by drones is declared an enemy terrorist, the death of nearby innocent women and children is accepted as inevitable. After more than 30 airstrikes on civilian homes this year in Afghanistan, President Karzai has demanded that such attacks end. But the practices continue in areas of Pakistan, Somalia, and Yemen. We don't know how many hundreds of innocent people have been killed, each one of them approved by the highest authorities in Washington. This would have been unthinkable in previous times. Jimmy Carter saying this would have been unthinkable in previous times. And I think this would have been unthinkable just under the Bush administration, that there would have been protests of hundreds of thousands of people out in the streets around these drone strikes. So I want to end with a quote by a friend of ours who is a Pakistani lawyer. He was a lawyer for corporations, made quite a good living, but he started to learn more about these drone attacks and felt that it was important that he start representing drone victims. This has made him a persona non grata here in the United States, particularly because he has sued the CIA in Pakistan for murder. He sued the ambassador in Pakistan for murder, and he is looking through the court systems to sue in as many different groups and individuals as he can to make the point that the US is murdering innocent people and getting away with it. And he says, can you trust a program that has existed for 8 years, picks its targets in secret, faces zero accountability, and has killed almost 3,000 people in Pakistan alone whose identities are not known to their killers? When women and children in Waziristan are killed with Hellfire missiles, Pakistanis believe this is what the American people want. I would like to ask Americans, do you? Well, I started out saying that unfortunately there are all too many Americans that think this is okay. we have to change public opinion, and we have to change our government's policies. We have to work hard to build a movement that is independent of who is in the White House, whether it was George Bush or whether it's Barack Obama or who knows who the next president will be. We have to be the countervailing force that demands that our government respect international law, respect the Constitution, respect the sanctity of life. Right now, we see polls that say that the vast majority of people around the world, the Pew Trust just did a poll of 22 countries, think that this policy is barbaric. So here we have the American people saying it's okay, and the rest of the world saying this is barbaric, this must be stopped. So our job is to transform that public opinion to make us in line with the rest of the world, so that we then demand that our government stop the killing and ground the drones. So I hope you will join in this campaign. I hope that we can work with the Peace and Justice Center, with the Occupy movement here, and any other groups that you're part of, to really build a strong, effective movement in this country that forces our government to ground the drones and stop the killing now. Thank you.
Now is the